If you're currently being underpaid by even just £1 an hour, that means that you're losing out on £162 every month you work, which means that in a year's time from now, you're going to be down almost £2,000. If you're being underpaid by £2 an hour and you do nothing about it in the next 3 years, you're going to lose out on £11,700. So asking your boss for a pay rise is probably worth doing, but building up the confidence to ask and actually securing that pay rise can be difficult. So what I want to do in this video is give you a step-by-step guide on how to ask for a pay rise in a way that you feel comfortable doing and in a way that's going to give you the best possible chance of securing the pay rise and getting your boss to pay you more money. Getting paid more money for the job that you're already doing is potentially one of the easiest ways to increase your income. But many of us shy away from asking for a pay rise because we're worried that we're asking for too much or we just don't want to cause trouble at work. But your time is your most valuable asset and you'll never get back any of the time you spend at work. So if you truly think that you're being undervalued, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be asked to be paid a bit more. But obviously you can't just storm into your boss's office and threaten to quit unless they double your salary. You need to be tactful, you need to build a convincing case, and you need to plan how you're going to approach this. So in this video, I want to give you that plan broken down into 5 simple steps that will help you to fully prepare for the conversation and give you the best chance of securing the pay rise. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I'm also going to show you what to do in the case where your employer says no. Because even if you're really good at your job and you put forward a very strong case as to why you deserve a pay rise, some employers will still say no. So you need to be prepared for what to do if that happens and you still want to secure that pay rise. The first step in securing a pay rise is to determine exactly how much you should be asking for. Because if you go into the conversation asking for a crazy high figure that is way above the market rates for your job, then your boss is probably going to shut that conversation down quite quickly. Now, of course, you want to be ambitious, but you need to be realistic too. So you need to get really clued up on what the pay rates in your industry are so that you go into the conversation with a good amount of knowledge and you know exactly how much you can get. To do this, you can use salary checker tools like the job site Reads here. There are lots of others out there and I'll put links to some of them in the description below so you can check those out. But basically you just need to enter a job title and location here and they'll give you an average salary based on the job adverts on their site. That will give you a rough figure to start with, but to get a more accurate idea of what you should personally be asking for, you'll need to look at a few of the job adverts in more detail. And in particular, you want to look for job adverts that have the same job title as yours, but they pay a little bit more, maybe around 10-20% more than what you're currently earning. So when you find these jobs, have a look at the responsibilities and see how closely they match your own. And the ones that match your job the closest are going to give you the best indication of how much you can realistically ask for. So save as many of these jobs as possible in a spreadsheet or something like that. And from looking at all of the salaries and working out an average, and also using a bit of your own judgment where you can, you should be able to come up with at least a rough idea of how much you can ask for. And if when you're doing this, you find that maybe you aren't actually doing some of the responsibilities that are appearing in some of the higher paid jobs, don't worry too much, because what you can perhaps do is maybe start picking up some of these responsibilities in your current role before you go in to ask for the pay rise, but I'll cover that in a bit more detail in the next section. Now, before I move on to step number 2, if you are finding this video helpful, I'd really appreciate if you could drop it a like and subscribe to the channel. On this channel, I make lots of videos about how to find the jobs that you really want and how to increase your income. So if you're interested in either of those topics, it would be well worth subscribing. The next step, and probably the most important one in making sure that you get taken seriously when you ask for a pay rise, is to make sure that you're performing well in your current role. Because if you're not doing all of the things that you're supposed to be doing in your current job, then straight away your boss has got some very good grounds to refuse your request. But if you're somebody who is reliable and you are genuinely providing a lot of value to your team or your company, then you're going to find it much easier to secure that pay rise and you're going to feel much more confident when you're going in to have that conversation with your boss. So check your job description and make sure you're performing well across all of the main areas. And if there are any areas that you feel that you're underperforming in, make sure you improve on them before you start going into pay rise conversations. And if you really want to ensure that you get the biggest pay rise you possibly can, then you can start taking on some extra responsibilities that are a step above your job. One really good way of doing this is by speaking to your boss and asking if they currently have any tasks they'd like to offload onto you to help them free up some of their time. Because if you're doing things that are above and beyond your job title, you're making yourself a very valuable team member and you're proving that you're worth that higher salary way before you've even asked for it. The third step in this plan is to list out all of the reasons as to why you should be paid more. Because when you speak to your boss around getting a pay rise, most of the conversation is going to revolve around the reasons as to why you should actually get this pay rise. Because ultimately any business or organisation will need to see some good solid reasons to justify the extra expense of paying you more. So if you create a list of all the reasons and you know them off the top of your head, then when you go into that conversation, you're going to have lots of ammunition and you'll be able to answer all of your boss's questions with some good, solid examples. So when you start building your list, the two main types of reasons that you need to focus on are, number one, what are you doing now that you weren't doing when you first started the job? And number two, how much value are you bringing to the employer? So for the first type, this might be some of the new responsibilities that you've picked up recently, or it may be new responsibilities that you've picked up over months or years. So it could be things like maybe now that you know more about certain products, you have more product knowledge or more service knowledge, or maybe you've got better at using a certain type of software or a certain tool, or maybe you're just producing more work or a better quality of work. So look at where you've improved over the course of doing your job and pick out the things that are making you more valuable now than you were when you first started. And for the second type, you need to identify things that you do that directly benefit your employer. So depending on the type of work that you do, this could be a number of things. It could be saving the company money or generating revenue for the company, improving the way they do things, like improving a process or improving a service, or helping them to win a big project or bring new clients on board. And with these reasons, it will really help if you can attach some facts or figures to them. So for example, you could say, I saved the company £5,000 by finding a new supplier, or I sent 500 customer leads to the sales team last year, which resulted in 100 sales. Because when you start attaching numbers to these reasons, it makes it very, very clear for employers to see how much value you're really bringing to the table. The fourth step is to create a rough plan of what you will say in order to get your message across properly and ensure that you make a convincing case. Now, the exact words that you say will obviously depend on the kind of job you have and the relationship you have with your boss, but I would recommend going with a structure like this and just molding it to fit your needs. Open the conversation by discussing how much you enjoy the job, how much you appreciate all the opportunities you've had, and just say some generally nice complimentary things about the company and about your boss too, just to get things kicked off in a nice positive way. Then move on to explaining how you've progressed since starting. And this is where you should start to mention some of the important reasons from the list you made to show your boss that you're actually worth a lot more now than when you first accepted your current salary. Then once you've teed it up nicely, simply ask for the pay rise. Say that you've researched the market and request the amount you want. You may want to script your plan out word for word, or you may just want to write down some rough notes to follow along. But either way, practice what you're going to say a few times so that when you go into the real conversation, you feel confident and you're prepared. The final step in this plan, and another very important one, is to choose the very best possible time to have this conversation. Because if you have this conversation at a time that's bad for your boss or bad for your company, then you risk throwing away all of the hard work that you've done up until this point. You need to have this conversation at a time that's going to be convenient for your boss, and ideally a time when they're likely to be in a good mood. And this means avoiding busy periods where everyone in the company is going to be stressed out. How and when you get this conversation arranged will largely depend on the type of company you work for and what their processes are like. If you work for a small, fairly informal firm, then it may be as simple as just leaning over to your boss and just saying, do you mind if I have a quick 5-minute chat with you? But if you work for a large corporate company, then you might need to book it in over email or something like that. However you decide to get the conversation arranged, when you're doing so, I would avoid mentioning that you're going to ask for a pay rise. And that's simply because you want to leave that part until after you've given them your list of reasons. If your boss really starts to quiz you on what the conversation is about, just say that you want to have a quick chat about your current role and it's nothing to worry about. So just to quickly recap on where you are at this stage, you've determined how much you should be asking for, you've been performing well in your current role, you've listed all of the reasons as to why you should be being paid more, you've planned out what you're going to say, and you've booked in the best possible time to have this conversation. If you've taken all of these steps, then you're going to be as prepared as you possibly can be. So as long as you stick to your plan of what you're going to say and you present your case well, then you stand a very, very good chance of getting a positive response and securing the pay rise that you want. However, as I mentioned before, you can never be 100% sure that your boss will agree. Even if you're performing well above your current job description and you're well overdue a pay rise, some employers will still find reasons as to why they don't want to pay competitive salaries. So what can you do if your employer says no? Well, your first option is to find out what you need to be doing in order to get that pay rise. And this is especially true if your employer or your boss has said no because they don't think you're performing well or they don't think you're doing enough. Then you can literally say to them, well, look, what do I need to be doing in order to get that pay rise? Then you can go away and start doing those things and then perhaps book in another review for another 6 months time, say, and then go back to them at that point and say, do I qualify for the pay rise now? However, if you followed all of the previous steps in this video, then it's very unlikely that an employer is going to deny your pay rise on the grounds of poor performance. It's more likely that they're going to say that they just don't have the budget to pay you anymore or some kind of other financial reason like that. So your second option is to simply start looking for a new job. because you already know from your previous research that there are lots of companies out there that are willing to pay more for the job that you're already doing. So it can't hurt to start reaching out to them and finding out if you can get a better deal elsewhere. So that brings me to the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching as always. And if you have found the video helpful, don't forget to like the video. It not only helps out the channel, but it also saves it in your playlist so you can go back and watch it later. And of course, if you want to see more videos on how to land the jobs you want and increase your income, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. Thanks again, and best of luck with your job search.